bombastic news on the march. Since the last great battle against the Tan forces, our boys abroad have enjoyed nearly 2 years of peacetime. But that peace was shattered yesterday when the Tan launched an unprovoked attack on Green troops stationed on our northern borders. The battle spread to the air and to the sea, including our new submarine front. The Tan apparently have not been able to separate themselves from their weapons, which is all the same to our boys. They're more than happy to lend a hand. Our boys are rested, well-trained, and more than ready to put an end to the Tan aggression once and for all.
Army Men World War Final Front, or Lock and Load as it's called in Europe, is the third game in the Army Men World War sub-series on PlayStation. Like Land, Sea, Air before it, Final Front doesn't do a lot to change the formula here. It looks, sounds, and plays almost exactly like the two previous games. Visuals are still mediocre, controls are still a bit clunky, but it's an overall decent Army Men experience. Unfortunately, though, it does fall short of its predecessors in my opinion. One of the things that Final Front gets very right is the vehicle combat. There are more vehicles to fight in than in Land, Sea, Air, with the addition of the motorcycle and the submarine. The submarine is definitely the cooler addition, with battles taking place underwater in 3 dimensions, but the motorcycle was more fun to use purely because of how fast you can move and run over Tan soldiers. You can also control a PT boat and have machine gun battles with other boats on the water. These vehicle missions have also lost the rails they tended to have in World War and in Land, Sea, Air, giving the player more freedom to use the vehicles to traverse the land. Unfortunately, controlling your actual soldier, which is how the majority of the game is played, is still a slow and cumbersome experience. It's still a fun game in spite of that, as the previous games were, but I had hoped that by their 4th PlayStation game, and the 3rd game in the World War sub-series, we'd have progressed a bit past this point with player movement. As with other Army Men games on the system, the visuals here are not impressive, and do not push the PS1 to its limit. I wouldn't say they're bad, but I do think subpar is a pretty fair descriptor. Like Red Steel was on the Wii, it looked okay, but the Wii hardware was capable of significantly better visuals, as we later see in its lifespan. However, this game came out a year into the console's successor's lifespan. There's little real excuse for the game to look this meh. Graphics aside, the sound design is a solidly mixed bag. On the one hand, the music is definitely a step down from the previous 2 games. On the other hand, the sound effects are actually fairly impressive, with the engine noise sounding appropriate and the crack of rifle fire having a good meaty feel to it. It's a shame, then, that the soldier controls, as I mentioned earlier, are still such garbage. I've heard that the game supports DualShock controllers, though I haven't confirmed that myself, and that they make controlling your soldier a lot easier, but with the original PS1 controller that I was using, it takes what feels like forever to turn around, which makes it hard to respond quickly to enemy gunfire. Like most of the Army Men series, World War Final Front is a middling piece of the PlayStation's library. The visuals are subpar, the controls are outright bad, but the sound and the gameplay are actually pretty solid. As I've said with most of the Army Men games, if you're a big fan of the franchise, or a passionate collector of PlayStation system exclusives, this one is worth picking up if you can find it fairly inexpensively. It's not going to wow you or anything, and it's definitely not a hidden gem by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a fairly enjoyable war game. My rating for Army Men World War Final Front on the PlayStation is a C.